Hello, day two, video two. This is where we're going to go over the assignment that was due today 5.1 Imperialism in the Spanish American War, 3, 4, 5. If you didn't catch the first video, we're going to go over this like yesterday's assignment or the assignment we discussed yesterday. But I also let you know that I'm giving you a copy of this as well because the formatting was off with the version you got. So I fixed that. So I'm going to give you this version as well. Okay. So we're going to get to that. Before I get to that, let's just put it on something like this. So I rewatched a little bit of the video I posted a few minutes ago and was embarrassed to notice that I touched my face like a dozen times. Yeah, bad look. Sorry about that. I'm going to attempt not to do that. I don't know how successful I'll be. All right, so here we go. Let's get started. There's Gorham Middle School. You're looking at it. And if we zoom in, see that car right there? That's my car. You know how I know that? What's that red thing? Look at that. What was that? All right, let's get out of that. I just know that that's my car. That's pretty wild. I can tell because you see how far over in the lane in the spot I'm parked, just so the car next to Celia. You want to come see this? Come see this. So she'll attest to the fact that I park in spots that are often really far away from where we're going because I don't want anyone to hurt my car. Doesn't that look like how I'd park in there?
Yeah.
With the wheels on that line, and look how much space. All right.
Yeah.
Good work. Thank you.
Take up 2 spots.
So let's go global. There goes Gorham. There's New England. Here's planet Earth. Okay. All right. Why is that? Come down here. Oh, whatever. All right. I'm going to try to use Google Maps today because in the assignment, let's start discussing right now. There are a bunch of locations that are mentioned. So I'm going to bounce back and forth between the assignment and Google Maps to show you where these locations were. All right. Here we go in 10 seconds. All right. So we're all familiar with industrialization. It was a time period where lots of industry. In your head, you should be thinking about what right now if we're talking industrialization? Mine's brick, has a bunch of smokestacks. It's called a factory. All right. So before that, we were pretty isolationist. What does isolationist mean? One is isolationist if you wish to remain apart from other groups, like countries, like what we're doing right now. We're all isolating ourselves from others, okay? Not for the reason America was doing it before industrialization, but you know what I mean. We're choosing, and America chose to keep to itself and not get involved in the business of others. That was before industrialization. Just on our own, the focus was inwards, not outwards. We've talked about the Monroe Doctrine before, all right? So that's why I asked you to be brief. It was named after, can you guess it? President Monroe. And it stated that the U.S. would stay up in its affairs, which sounds about right. But it went on to say that, hey, Europe, you are not to get involved over here in North and South America, other than where you're already involved. Okay? And it further went on to say that if they came over here and got involved, America would consider it threatening. So it's like, we dare you to come over here type thing. So American politicians began to use the Monroe Doctrine a little bit more broadly than like what these three things identified it to be. All right, time out. Here's a plug for a podcast. that I like listening to. It's called Stuff You Should Know. And at the end of every podcast, they have a listener mail segment where listeners will write in and pretty much tell them where they've been wrong. So anytime during any of these videos I say something inaccurate, please let me know in a polite manner. All right, time in. So American politicians used to began Monroe Doctrine as a reason that we were getting involved in Latin America. All right, so as a review, Europe, stay out. Unless you're already over here, and then you can stay, but no more. And if you do come over here, we're going to consider it threatening. And it's almost like fighting words, okay? But then almost four, hey, Europe, you remember when we told you you couldn't get involved over here? Yeah, we're going to go ahead and get involved over here when we think it's right, all right? And it says, in my answer, it says to justify our involvement in Latin America. All right. The next question says, what were the only places in Latin America controlled by Spain by the end of the 1800s? And there weren't many. 2, Cuba and Puerto Rico. Bang. Let's go over here. We got New England. That didn't go well. Here we have Cuba. Here's Florida. South Florida, like the Florida Keys. This is the Bahamas. I'll tell you what these places are called now because the labels are up here. So here you have Cuba, okay? And here you have Puerto Rico. So Spain was over here, but really only running the show in Puerto Rico and Cuba, okay? Back to the assignment. That's not it. This is it. So I also said the textbook did an okay job. You know, it just threw Latin America there, and it didn't really describe what Latin America is. All right, so I'll boil it down to this. It's basically everywhere in the Western Hemisphere, south of the U.S., including the Caribbean. So if you're keeping track at home, that's pretty much all of North America, except for Canada, and then all of Central America, which is part of North America, pretty much all of South America, and pretty much all of the Caribbean. So if we go back here, I don't know why the globe's so far up here, but here, Mexico, Central America, all of the Caribbean, South America, that's what you can think of when you think of Latin America, okay? So Spain obviously colonized a ton of Central and South America and Portugal and other European countries. But at the time, they were only really running the show in Cuba and Puerto Rico. All right. And Cuba was doing something Americans were familiar with. And that's Cuba was trying to gain independence from their colonial power, which had been Britain, Spain. Okay. And there were several reasons why Americans took the side of the Cubans in their struggle, for instance, against the Spanish. And the first reason, and we go back to this again and again and again, most often, the number one answer to social studies questions can be pretty much always connected to one thing, and that's money, okay? And this situation was no different. There were a lot of, I just touched my face. That's probably for the 5th time. Sorry about that. I'll work on that. There were tons of American businesses in Cuba. So people were making money doing business in Cuba. We bought a lot of stuff from Cuba. A lot of the stuff we bought was bought from American-owned plantations, think sugar. And those plantations were corporations, and Americans had invested money in those corporations. So it was important that those businesses / plantations continued to do well. And Spain threatened that. Basically, what it came down to is Spain was about to cost Americans and American businesses a lot of money by controlling the economics of Cuba more closely, okay? So a lot of it was about money. Hey, we support Cuba. We're going to be more profitable. But the other thing, and I wasn't alive at the time, but I would think it was a pretty big reason, is because Americans, remember, it had been just over like 100 years since we had gained our independence. We look at it now as forever ago, 250 years ago. But remember, we're talking 120 years ago from now. So it was like half the time. So they were even more nostalgic for America's fight for independence. So when Americans saw Cubans doing the same thing, the inkling was to support the Cubans, kind of the underdog in the fight, as the colonists may have been. All right, I'll tell you what else helped get Americans to support the Cuban people, and that's journalism. Now, you'll see in the question I have, is yellow journalism? Yellow journalism is alive and well. It's not like it was a thing from 120 years ago. It's just not true. I'm not saying all journalism is yellow journalism, but there's a huge amount of it. Think about it. Yellow journalism is a type of reporting that exaggerates or sensationalizes stories to sell more newspapers. To make it contemporary times, instead of to sell more newspapers, to get more clicks, to get more downloads, to get more views. Okay? And so how? Well, they reported on the Cubans' fight for independence in a way that made the Spanish look really bad. And the Spanish had been really bad at times, but American journalists took that ball and ran with it. All right. So they helped make the Spanish look bad and the Cubans more like underdog victim. Spain was the bully, that sort of thing. And then yellow journalism came in huge with the USS Maine. So that was a naval vessel named after, not quite sure what that ship was named after. I knew at one point. Oh, wait. Yeah, it's Maine. It's us. That exploded. That was in Havana Harbor, Cuba, and it exploded, and hundreds of sailors died. Huge deal. Yellow journalism helped convince Americans that Spain was to blame, and boom went the war. When I think I told you this before when we last saw each other, that a lot of historians think that it was not Spain's fault. It was a malfunction. It was an accident. But that's not how much of the U.S. press made it sound. All right, so off to war we go. We're not going to spend any real time on what went on with the war. I asked the question, how long did it last? It lasted less than 4 months. I don't mean to get you to think, oh, it was less than 4 months, so it wasn't a big deal, because people were dying. So it was always a big deal. If you'll remember, this is where Teddy Roosevelt really became like a national figure. He organized his own group of volunteer cavalry dudes that, I don't know, they were covered during the war, and they became heroic and covered widely by the press. And I've said this before, I'll say it again. It's the character played by Robin Williams in the Night at the Museum movies. Remember, he's in a uniform, military uniform type thing on a horse. That's Teddy Roosevelt, not President Roosevelt, but Rough Rider Roosevelt. All right. But it didn't last that long. All right. And with most wars, it ends with a treaty. And if you haven't noticed, there are about 1 million treaties of Paris. I think I had a professor once tell me that the reason there were so many treaties of Paris was that Paris was like a really cool place to hang out. And all these like world leaders, when they had to actually sit down and hammer out some agreements after the war, figuring stuff out, what better place to do it than Paris? That's what I heard. So you may have heard the phrase, to the winner go the spoils. Which means if you win, you get stuff. And the United States won, so we got stuff. All right. What do we get? It says the United States acquired the Philippines from Spain for $20 million. I have acquired here in quotes because, check this out. The Philippines was like its own place, wanted to be its own place. And then there was Spain, and then there was the United States. So I count 3 different places. 2 of those places, Spain and the United States, decided what would happen to the 3rd spot, the Philippines. So we got it, but we had to pay Spain for it, $20 million. All right. Cuba gained its independence from Spain, and the U.S. agreed to not take control of it. Spoiler alert, yeah, no, we had control of it for a long time. We're not going to take a deep dive into that, but know that the U.S. was very involved with Cuba for decades after the Spanish-American War. Before Cuba was taken over by Castro and the communists, Cuba was like the place in the Caribbean that that Americans would go and travel, like the jewel of the Caribbean. Ask your parents about, is it, I'm going to get this wrong. I think it's Godfather 2 that they're in Cuba, a little bit of it. If it's 1, my bad. I think it's definitely not 3. All right, so Cuba gained its independence, but excuse me, not really. And then we also gained the islands of Guam and Puerto Rico. So I've shown you Cuba and Puerto Rico. Let's take a look at Guam and the Philippines. So I want to reset this. I just touched my face again. Sorry, everybody. All right. So there we are. Excuse me. All right. There we are. Let's go to Guam. Now, remember, Cuba, Puerto Rico. Nope. Lying. That's Jamaica. Cuba, Puerto Rico. That's Jamaica. Guam is, well, let's forget that. We're going to take a look at Hawaii at some point. So let's start there. There's Hawaii. Definitely bucket list. Got to get there at some point. But, excuse me, definitely a long off way from the United States, right? So we got here, Southern California. Here's Hawaii, which we eventually grab as well. Let's go Guam. Excuse me. Guam, one island, middle of the Pacific. All right, I'm not going to keep clearing my throat. I'm going to hit pause here for a second. Be back in a minute. All right, here we go. So here's Guam, middle of the Pacific. And then let's just do it this way. That's not right. I am not going to find the Philippines on first. Come on, Rick, you can do this. There it is. There it is. Guam and the Philippines. So obviously super far away from the United States. Let's get back to the assignment. So we got Guam, we got Puerto Rico. All right, next question. We're talking Philippines now. Long way away. Remember, this had been a Spanish colony. The Filipino people didn't want Spain there. Time out. Time in. So the Filipino people wanted their independence from Spain long before the Spanish-American War. But after the Spanish-American War, Spain gave the Philippines to us for a bunch of money. We talked about that above. And we pulled up with some Army and Navy and protected it, which basically was like, all right, we'll let you operate, but we're going to just hang out and make sure that if anything goes down, this stays ours. It's important to us. McKinley was concerned. Remember, Roosevelt took over from McKinley when McKinley was assassinated. He was concerned that if the U.S. military left another imperialist country, name a Europe country, he was worried that it would swoop in and grab it. All right. So we annexed it. It's usually to describe one territory, the United States gaining control of another, like the Philippines or Hawaii. This often didn't happen peacefully. Okay. So why did we annex it? Why did we take it over? All right. I bet you can guess one reason. Yep. We just wanted it. It added to our whole imperialism. Like, sweet, look at this kind of tropical place halfway around the world. Wouldn't it be cool to have like a summer home there? I say this not really trying to be humorous, but it was this like almost like, let's go up to camp. It's this far off place that was ours. All right. And then there was also some like racism, nationalism, religious aspect to it. McKinley said, you know what, we got to help these Filipino people. We got to lift them up. We got to uplift them and bring Christianity to the area. I said, which was unnecessary. Spain had run the show there. Spain is super Catholic. Catholicism is a part of Christianity. So it was already there. Speaking about like the Christian aspect of the Philippines, I could be wrong with this, but my understanding is Filipino people, much of them, so much enjoy Christmas, a Christian religious holiday, that they start celebrating Christmas in like September. Correct me if I'm wrong. All right, here's the money thing. It had money economically. It was a part of our like push to stretch across the globe, and it was like a military outpost, like a fort we had out on the frontier. All right. And we wanted to keep our military there so we could keep the Philippines. All right. So we're going to talk about this in the next assignment, but check this out. Filipino people wanted their independence from Spain long before Spain went to war with the United States. Then they went to war with the United States. U.S. wins. I think it's accurate to say they were excited that, yeah, you know what, it's on. We're going to gain our independence here, but we stuck around. Not all of Americans wanted to. There were a lot of Americans that were anti-imperialists, okay? And this is going to finish up today's assignment. Give me about 60 more seconds, maybe 120 seconds. Anyway, so why were Americans against imperialism? Well, they were also against expansionism. You know what? Nope. We can't keep grabbing more and more. We can't keep taking over more and more. All right. We are a country of freedom and justice and doing the right thing. And some people were like, yo, it just doesn't sound like it's the right thing to go over and limit this far off place's freedom. Doesn't seem fair. Okay. It doesn't seem American. If part of what is being democratic and being able to determine for ourselves what we want to do, where we want to go, then the America's and the Philippines was certainly limiting that. And then we never can get away from it, I guess. Oftentimes during imperialism, whether it was European countries or the United States, places around the world that they reached out to grab control of, many of those places were of people of color. So you just couldn't get away the image of wealthy, Western, rich, I already said wealthy, white Christian guys reaching out all over the planet to grab control of places that weren't necessarily Christian, that weren't necessarily white, that were fine just doing what they wanted to do, and income European and then American imperialist powers. That's it for this assignment. It went okay. Sorry for the coughing. Just a real quick preview. This is the assignment I gave to you today. It's Explore 6, 8, and 10. We're talking Philippines again. We're talking Hawaii. This is maybe going to be the most challenging one. So spoiler alert, we took over Hawaii too. There's a lot on this, but I want you to limit yourself to 5 sentences. Please explain why we annexed Hawaii, what America's reaction to it was, and 3, what was the impact of the annexation? If you're interested, quick little preview. No, I shouldn't do this because you can pause and go back to it. I'm out. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much. Video 1 today had some of those just general information moving forward. This video covered the assignment due today. Have a great weekend. I'm out.